there have been periods in history where women were quite blatantly described as not even the same creature as men, not even the same species, not even as human as men. Hi, I'm Summer Tothill. Every week on my Instagram, I run a Q&A with my followers. They ask me their questions about how gender equality and oppression is affecting them in their world, and I answer. If you join me on Instagram, you can take part in the Q&A, ask your own questions, get your answers, get involved. What would you like to see the government legislate on to hasten equality for women? This is such a great question because it can be really easy to feel quite despondent around how we are going to attack gender inequality. But there are many ways that legislation and policy change can actually affect the change that we need to reduce some of the impacts that systemic patriarchy and misogyny have on us, because they change those parts of the system that are described by systemic patriarchy. So the main category of legislation I would like to affect all have to do with women's economic participation and the many ways that, in particular, becoming a primary caregiver of children, or in particular having children and the obligation to become a primary caregiver, economically disempowers women. And when women are economically disempowered, it prevents women from being able to make independent choices in their life in many ways. When women are economically disempowered, they may struggle to get out from under abusive relationships. They may struggle to address their health. They may struggle to access opportunities. It isn't fair, and I see it as a form of violence, that society is still structured in a way that women are economically disadvantaged and that we get to the end of our lives with a great deal less wealth than men do. And one of the key ways this happens is what is called the motherhood penalty. So I guess the specific legislation that I would change would happen to paid parental leave. We currently do have parental leave in Australia, and you don't have to be only a woman or only the birthing parent to take it, but that doesn't go far enough. I mean, for starters, it doesn't pay the birthing parent enough for long enough to still not materially impact their career. Second of all, our parental leave doesn't go far enough to incentivize the non-birthing parent, which in most couples is the man, because most couples who have children are straight, not all, but most. It doesn't go far enough to incentivize the man to take leave in the early part of the child's life and set themselves up as a primary caregiver. So in some Scandinavian countries, non-birthing parents, usually the father, are able to access an amount of parental leave that they can only take if it is taken in the first 12 months of the child's life. And the whole point of that is to make it really attractive for men specifically to take on the responsibilities of being the primary caregiver really early on, at the point where those habits and routines are being established, while also empowering the birthing parent, which is usually a woman, to return to her career, to return to economic participation, and to not be critically compromised by the way that becoming a primary caregiver who is not in paid work or is in only part-time paid work is compromised in their long-term career, in their ability to earn money, and critically, the thing that we never seem to name, but I always do, their ability to still support themselves financially and in their career if/when their partner leaves them. In child rearing between straight people, men get to continue their careers and get to progress in their careers, while their partners who have their children stall their careers, become primary caregivers, and then are unable to progress at the rate that men are, even if we still return to work, even if we still, we're independent women, we've got our own careers and we want to return to them. We still are not able to progress as fast as men, to end up 10 years down the track with as much money as men. And therefore, when relationships end, we are not empowered to be independent, to make choices. Relying on someone else financially is an incredibly vulnerable, disempowering position, and there is no guarantee that that person will always be able to do that for you, even if they want to, which, newsflash, many relationships end up in the man not wanting to. So government can change this by making it not a career crippling event to have a child. So that is what I would change first. There are many laws that need to change, many policies that need to change. I haven't even touched on things that specifically affect women of colour, Indigenous women, disabled women, but something that is common to most women is primary caregiving of children. And I say this as someone who doesn't have children and doesn't ever want to have children. This is something that is still such a huge issue that someone like me can be aware of it, sympathetic to it, and see how the caregiving dynamic is destroying women's ability to make choices and making them uniquely vulnerable to oppression and exploitation. Why don't doctors believe women with medical issues? Do you want the long answer or the short answer? Just kidding, I'm only capable of giving long answers, so that's what you're going to get. All right, let's wander back through time and observe the ways that women have never been considered authorities on their own experience, and also how they have been considered intellectually inferior to men. I mean, there have been periods in history where women were quite blatantly described as not even the same creature as men, not even the same species, not even as human as men. And once it was, I guess, accepted that women were human at the very least, the medical and scientific fields still tried to prove that women had smaller brains than men and that women didn't even have the same thinking capacity as men. And those attempts were unsuccessful, by the way. I'm sure everybody's aware of the origins of the concept hysteria, where the ancient Greeks thought that women's uteruses went wandering throughout our bodies and caused all kinds of craziness, which is another factor to consider here, is that women have also always had their sanity discredited. They have been characterized as crazy, overly emotional, all of which adds up to this idea that women cannot be trusted to be the authorities on our own experience, and that we can't even be trusted to be authorities on anything, that the things we think we know, we don't know. As I talk about a lot, this results in what's known as the authority gap, where people of all genders are more likely to discredit women's expertise, not believe them, interrupt them when they speak, and be resistant to women's authority, among a host of other things. People are unwilling to accept that women know things. It naturally follows that a woman attesting to her own experience, to something that is going on in her own body, to something that nobody else can feel but her, will naturally struggle to be believed in a patriarchal society. Now let's add on to that the fact that the medical community and the history of medicine has also been hostile, if not openly violent, towards women. The medical industry and profession is still largely male dominated, largely male researched. Everything that had to do with the human body for the last several hundred years has been the purview of men. I mean, men even took midwifery away from women. They characterized it as evil and as a sort of profane type of knowledge, which is why today OBGYNs are still mostly men, as far as I'm aware. So the entire society doesn't want to trust women on anything or believe we know anything. And the medical profession is primed to not understand women and to take them with a grain of salt. And then add to this that women's health conditions specific to the uterus, to our hormones, to our bone density, to the many things that are nowhere near as well researched, well studied and attended to as men's issues, or as issues that are common to all bodies. So when you walk into a healthcare setting as a woman, you are walking in with the weight of people not believing you, people thinking you're crazy, people having a history of not actually knowing anything about you and your body, and potentially no awareness that they have those biases. That's it for this Q&A. Thank you so much for listening. Find me on Instagram at summertothill. That's summer with an O, spelt the same way as you see in this YouTube channel. I can't wait to see you there.